Oh, yeah.
All right, let's do this. The first section is explaining the Industrial Revolution. That's the red heading.
I'd say it's more of a pink, actually. No.
All it's saying is that it happened because there was an energy crisis and the population went up. It also had bad impacts on the environment.
Yeah, it made the rivers poop, and then it made the streets also poop.
All right. So industrialization was basically the use of coal and oil and fossils and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we got that part down. Easy to remember.
Okay, so the first blue section is why Europe.
Yeah.
So the reasons that were in Wing were there was more competition.
Yeah.
They had a lot of money from the colonies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, with the competition, so they favored the innovation.
mm-hmm.
So they were like wanting to be the best compared to the other states and empires and all that, or like the other empires. That.
They had like good geography. I don't know if you said that already.
That was in England.
No, yeah, that was England.
Oh, yeah, Europe in general. Sorry.
The European states and monarchs were desperate for revenue, so they established an alliance with the merchant class. I wouldn't say that's like actually had to do. Wait, well, maybe.
No, yeah, no, it does have to do with it. I forgot because everywhere else, mercantilism was looked down upon.
Okay.
I don't think there's really much for Europe, right?
Yeah, it was just the government, and then let's see. Hold on.
I mean, the governments encouraged like innovation and stuff
Yeah.
because they needed money.
Yeah. There you go.
So they went into alliance with with the merchant class. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it for Europe. So in Britain, it was good geography.
Yeah, Britain. Yeah.
Good geography in Britain. Good like travel. They could get around because of all rivers and stuff.
Yeah, kind of like going in more depth about the geography, because they were away from Napoleon's like
Yeah, like all in like Europe, basically.
expansion.
Yeah.
And then they also had a lot of coal and iron ore.
Very close to like
surface.
big cities and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then their science studies were more practical
Mm-hmm.
and not theoretical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, the reason why they had like their industrialization was like more sort of like faster going, faster, like sort of developing.
Mm-hmm.
Is landlords sort of remember they enclosed the agricultural land, so then they got the labor from farmers,
Mm-hmm.
and then the British were entrepreneurs, and then they wanted to invest, and the political life was pretty stable, and they also encouraged like commercialization and economic innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The aristocrats were entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Okay, that covers Britain. So now the next blue section is the British aristocracy.
Okay, yeah.
That one just goes
Oh.
over how the aristocracy fell a little bit because of a new rising middle class.
Yeah.
And then
What
once it
for-
started to fall, they started to like invest in like leaving, I guess, like going outside of
Well-
Britain, basically.
that at first they stayed on top, like super rich, because the like widespread urbanization of people coming inland or like inward to cities,
Hmm.
their agricultural and like livestock industries, they were still making a lot of money off of feeding them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much for that one. So the middle class is the next blue section.
And all that.
Donors,
They were the ones that owned the mines and the factories.
entrepreneurs.
With the middle class is also like the classical liberalism.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They're like they created a like a mindset, and it was based basically upon like respectability.
Yeah.
If you were
Yeah.
poor, it was your fault.
And yeah, and they believe that if you were poor, it was your fault, and that you can become rich by hard work. Oh, women in the middle class didn't work,
Yeah.
and they took part in activities like shopping, which was new.
Yeah, they introduced like shopping and what else? Like
They took care of the children.
they kind of
Yeah.
set like they kind of defined women more
Mhm.
as people who shopped, rose or child rearing. It's on page 838. It's like the first paragraph. It says shopping, homemaking, child rearing, charitable endeavors, and refined activities such as embroidery, music, and drawing as the proper sphere for women.
Mhm.
While paid employment in public sphere of life outside the home was beckoned to men. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a
So
defining time.
yeah. Yeah. So around like the late 19th century is when the women began to like get actual jobs such as like teachers and nurses, and then uh once they started working in like actual like factories or something like that, they began to get more education because working in the factory required the workers to get like more education. So as well as the children. So yeah, so they got more education around. Like, if you're like in the middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for that section. The next section is the laboring classes.
Suffered the most and benefited the least.
Mm-hmm. It was 70% of the population.
Yeah. Benefited.
Mhm. They were the factory workers.
Hmm.
They're kind of the result of large scale urbanization,
Mm-hmm.
and like the conditions of their lives were the result of that. Like they had contaminated water, bad hygiene, generally bad places to live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so with the laboring classes rising, it's because they went from the rural life to like cities and towns, thus making the cities, like you guys said, it was like terrible conditions and all that. So it's like crowded, and between the rich and the poor in the cities, they didn't really like have much contact. And,
What is it?
Poop.
Cholera. Tenement buildings. Those.
The women in the laboring class, they worked because they couldn't afford to not work.
Same with the children. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I ripped another page.
bruh.
The owners of the factory like watched everybody work, and there was like 16-hour work days, and they would get beat if they did something wrong.
If a man in the laboring class was like let go or something, they were considered a failure.
Yeah.
And that's why they didn't want to be let down, and they also needed, have money for their families.
Yeah.
There's also gender hierarchy within the the labor and like on the mill or something.
No woman went above like worker basically.
Yeah.
The next one is social protest.
All right. So basically those labor unions. So like all those people in the working class sort of like came together and they started doing like strikes or acts for better conditions and they wanted higher wages, and that caused like the upper classes, like if they owned like mills or something, they would also fear the strike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because all the workers would just not come, and then it'd like
They lose
destroy
money.
their industrial output.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karl Marx thought that communism was a better way of existing, and he thought that it could only happen if there was a big working class revolution.
Yeah, he also inspired the socialist movements.
Socialism or like communism basically didn't happen in Britain because it was like stable. It was actually kind of nice, and they were like high enough wages, kind of.
Yeah.
Marx kind of predicted that there would be rebellion and revolts and upheavals,
Yeah.
but generally he was wrong about that.
He didn't predict the rise of the middle class.
He was only right about that in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because later on, workers in the middle class, or workers, had a better standard at one point, and they lived even though they were living under the capitalist framework. He didn't predict that.
Also, at some point, like Britain also didn't become communist because they allowed trade unions to happen, so people actually like got represented and stuff.
What year was it again that they made the strikes legal again? I forgot. Hold on.
Oh, trade unions were legalized in 1824.
Oh, 1824. Okay.
And the ones that were successful were the ones that were like respectable and didn't like kill or harm or like do anything. Basically, use violence to get their way.
Yeah, like the Labor Party was a peaceful, democratic, or reformist program. It was a peaceful, democratic transition to socialism, largely rejecting the class struggle and the revolutionary emphasis of classical Marxism. So, like, I don't know, some didn't really call for too like brutal or sudden changes, but they're peaceful about it, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so like later on, between the working classes and middle classes, mostly around that area, there was sort of like economic and social conflicts along the way, and then in Britain, it became like unstable at one part, or like at one point, and then because there were so many inequalities in the separated classes.
Mm-hmm. Also, a big like basically what caused communism to like not happen anymore was like better wages in places, and also like the legalization of trade unions. Food was also coming in now.
Basically, the satisfaction of the wants of the labor group, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, look! I just found this. nationalism, like the growing nationalism in every place, basically helped to erode the communism.
Oh wait, did you find that on page like 844 or something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that. Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
it bound workers in particular countries to their middle class employers and compatriots,
Yeah. I'll probably be on the test.
and it offset to some extent the economic and social antagonism between them.
Yeah.
And also, like
Wait, what?
child labor was abolished.
Yeah.
Stuff. So I think it's good.
What paragraph is that?
The top and the second on 844.
Okay.
And that's it for that section. Now, Europeans in motion.
So yeah, like context wise, it's a bunch of people from Europe moved out because with all the migration that were coming in, and then let's see, yeah, so they moved out of like Europe into like the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa and elsewhere. But then sometimes they didn't enjoy some of the places that they moved to, so a
They
few
went
people,
back.
yeah, a few people went back.
Yeah. Like, pretty sure somewhere it said like 7 million. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
7 million returned to Europe. What made it possible for them to move was like the cheapness of using railroads and steamships and how speedy they were.
Mm-hmm.
Then afterwards, so since they were moving out of Europe, there was a bunch of people that enjoyed like the Latin America or South America because they were considered white, and then they got like sort of that privilege of like uh yeah, more like advantages compared to like all the people at the lower classes or like other races like Indian or African people.
Yep. Also in Russia, they encouraged what's it? They encouraged Russians to like spread out in Serbia.
Yeah.
Wait, Serbia or Siberia?
Siberia. I don't know, Serbia.
Okay.
Serbia.
Yeah, it's like Siberia is up north with Russia. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on the next
Pink
section.
red section. Yeah. Various variations on a theme: industrialization in the United States and Russia.
So for the United States, it began in textile factories in New England. There was a lot of natural resources ready.
Yeah.
It had political stability.
There's also like a lot of space
Mm-hmm.
for people to move in.
My phone's at 1%.
Oh,
The U.S. was receiving foreign investments, and they were able to use those funds to like make their own industrial revolution. The government played an important role because it like gave some companies and stuff tax breaks.
Yeah.
It granted public land to railroad companies.
Yep. And the laws were like very abiding for the industries.
It wasn't very strict, yeah.
Yeah, it was very enabling and somewhat unethical for them, but also helpful for them.
Uh-huh. They pioneered techniques of mass production, like the assembly line and interchangeable parts. Capitalists became like role models. So that offset communism.
Yeah.
There was relative social equality before the Industrial Revolution, but then after there was a widening gap.
Yeah, it was kind of you were either a large entrepreneur or you were a working labor person.
That lived in houses with like 2 toilets,
Yeah, there
or
was no
like
in between.
huge buildings with 2 toilets.
Or you pooped in a bucket and dumped it out the window onto the streets.
The conditions generated labor protest, of course.
Yeah,
But
especially with like
unlike many European countries, no major political party emerged in the United States.
yeah, there's too much diversity because of all the like immigration to it from all over the world.
Also, socialism didn't appeal to the American worker as it did in Europe, and that's because of relative conservatism of major American union organizations. Because it focused on skilled workers instead of the radical unskilled workers, which were the ones that wanted change. And then, like you said, Chris, the diverse workforce led to a sharp racial divide, so like there was really no unity, basically.
It led to unions, just not politically united unions.
Then the economic growth generated on average, a higher standard of living.
America was kind of like a survival of the fittest place.
Yeah. Some things did occur, like the farmer, the populists, which represented the farmers, but nothing crazy happened, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Russia, Russia was basically the last, like, king ruling place.
Really wanted to catch up to the other industrializing countries.
Yeah. So
They wanted to be up there.
they set off on a big, like, industrial revolution campaign.
Yeah. They
And then the only change happened when the Tsar wanted to, basically, like the people in power wanted to.
Yeah. When they were trying to catch up, they didn't see a spot for serfdom in a futuristic industrial society.
So they got
So
rid
they
of
kind
serfdom.
of, yeah, they sought out to eliminate it.
Mm-hmm.
Socialism succeeded in taking over the government in
Yes,
Russia.
it did. There was a growing middle class, and they saw a greater political role in they saw a greater political life, but they were also dependent on the state,
Yeah.
and they feared the workers.
Yeah, because the workers were angry. They wanted more, they wanted better conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they were they're only 5% of the population.
A defeat against the battle with Japan, like, like made strike happen, and then from there it just went downhill.
Yeah. Wasn't it like World War One? Yeah, World War One was like the toppling moment of Russia. That was when they were just like overturned.
Yeah, well,
by
World War One,
socialism.
everything went bad.
Yeah. But yeah, like
The 1905 revolution, which happened after the Japan battle, forced the Tsar's regime to make more substantial reforms they had ever contemplated.
Despite it being brutally destroyed.
Suppressed. It created a constitution, legalized both trade unions and political parties, and permitted the election of a national assembly.
the Duma.
Even though they did that, they really didn't like pay attention or care about it. So they kind of like threw it away, which made people mad.
Yeah, it was kind of like a cover up to make it seem like the things that the public wanted were happening.
Yep. And then World War One happened, and then in 1917, Vladimir Ulyanov or Lenin, that ran the Bolsheviks party, basically took over after the whole 1917 revolution.
Yeah, again, the only successful inspired socialist movement.
Now it's after independence in Latin America. So they got their freedom, but it left everywhere like bad, basically. Like it had empty national treasuries, and it was flooded mines and stuff. And then
Yeah,
the
rebellion kind of. Sorry.
It dissolved into 18 separate countries, and then once that happened, there were wars between those countries.
The rebellions previously, for like political independence, those kind of destroyed the economy in all of them.
Mm-hmm. Within all the new countries, political life was turbulent and unstable.
Yeah.
People sought to maintain the social status quo of the colonial era, basically where the white people were on top, or the whites. Then the liberals fought against them. They attacked the church.
Yeah. Enlightenment values sought modest social reforms and preferred federalism. In many countries, conflicts between these factions, often violent, enabled military strongmen known as caudillos to achieve power as defenders of order and property. The caudillos, they kind of provided the only way for like economic movement in the hierarchy, I guess. It was the only way to get a poor person to rich.
Women remained disenfranchised and wholly outside of formal political life. Slavery was abolished. Slavery was abolished. And then most of the legal distinctions among various racial categories also disappeared, and all free people were considered, at least officially, equal citizens.
Yeah.
But much of the land, like ranches and plantations, remained in the hands of white males that were oriented towards Europe. The military offered people a good way to like get up in status. Some women became teachers, and then basically the other races were still poor and impoverished and lived off small farms or laboring in the mines or on plantations.
Yeah, they kind of remained poor.
And there was rarely any like revolutions or strikes. So now, facing the world economy. So there was some like peace at points, but like new and faster ways of ship travel,
steamships, telegraph,
allowed like faster times between places, so that increased the amount of export that these countries could have, and they exported a lot like metals and rubber and food.
It also transported like news and trends between the Western and Eastern hemispheres.
hmm And then what they got back were textiles, machinery, tools, weapons, and like other goods.
Basically industrialized goods.
Also, once this big export boom happened, there was a large-scale investment of European capital in Latin America, and most of it came from Great Britain.
Yeah.
And then U.S. built some railroads, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then now there's one last one, but I didn't read it.
Becoming like Europe.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I did it on yesterday. Okay, so what I got from my notes on it were sanitation, like increase in sanitation, increase the population and living rates. They adopted cars, phones, and elite tea drinking methods from like the superpowers of the world, like Europe. Basically, they wanted to become more like them, seeing that they were like the world leaders. They sought to attract the European white populations and succeeded in doing so by adopting their their stuff. However, like despite having all these things from Europe, only 9%, 1% being elites, and 8% being the middle class gained from it. The exports, the rest remained impoverished, which would be, 91% of the population. They used the military to shut down any like labor strikes or unions with violence, like they killed everyone. The rich took the land from the poor and then forced them into labor because they needed to make money somehow. Mexico's dictator was overthrown, and it resulted in a constitution and large reforms, but like that did a lot for them at the time, but also stewed up more conflict in the next century. There was like a ton of new constitutions and like revolutions all over the place. A lot of new laws, a lot of reformations. But it honestly, like it helped out, but I guess it was just not like the best time for them. The export boom did not initiate much of a what does that even say? Can't read my own handwriting. Okay. So Latin America didn't really experience much of an industrial revolution because they just mostly focused on exports. Like they introduced like factories and textile mills and stuff, but they didn't introduce like industrial ideas, I guess. Pretty much the rich stayed rich through agriculture and cattle, seeing no need for change, and competing with worldwide inventors would be near impossible. Latin America depended on North America and European investments. Basically, the money that went in provided them with the means to have factories and stuff, and then the business pressured Latin America to make conditions favorable for foreign countries. So they kind of they made it bad for their own people in order to satisfy foreign needs. Yeah, that's all my notes on it. We could go into more depth if you want to look through it.
Right, I'm trusting you, Chris, on that last section.
Ballin' like my nigga.